Hi, everyone. Welcome back. This is Dr. Cleopatra. I am with the beautiful Dr. Roseann, and we have a very special guest today, our dear friend, Dr. Joan Rosenberg. She is going to be such a treat for all of you mamas, in the future mamas, and experienced mamas. Dr. Joan has written a book called 90 Seconds to a Life You Love. Wanted to make sure I get that exactly right. 90 Seconds to a Life You Love. And her zone of genius is helping people to cope with difficult emotions and have difficult conversations. Dr. Roseann, will you tell our mamas all about Dr. Joan, please?
Well, this is such a pleasure to read the bio of Joan Rosenberg because she's just a good human being and
Really
always has such nuggets when we listen to her. And it's like, oh, yeah, a lot of light bulb moments go on when Joan is around. So hopefully people will feel that when they are listening or watching us. So Joan Rosenberg, PhD, is a creator of Emotional Mastery, which is trademarked, and Emotional Mastery Training. And she's a highly regarded and expert psychologist, clinician, a trainer, consultant. She's a college professor. She does a lot of pretty awesome things to support the field. She's a cutting edge psychologist who's known as an innovative thinker and trainer as well as speaker. She did a lot of speaking. And she shared her life-changing ideas and models for emotional mastery, change, and personal growth in professional and a lot of different educational seminars. She's had 2 TEDx talks, Santa Barbara and TEDxRoseburg. And the first is about emotional mastery, the gifted wisdom of unpleasant feelings, which nobody wants to talk about, but love to talk about even that. And grief, the pathway to forgiveness. So, so welcome to the Parent Coffee Talk. And I would love, in this world of people trying to helicopter their kids, now lawnmower their kids, tech lining them up so that they don't experience uncomfortable emotions, and take a pill for it. Let's talk about uncomfortable emotions and how they can actually really help you in a lot of ways and all the different components of that. This is an exciting talk because I talk about, one of my favorite parenting books from a long time ago is Blessing of the Skin Knee.
Oh, yeah.
How you skin your knee, you learn some things. It kind of toughens you up. We're not getting to that extreme. But talk to us about emotional mastery. And
thank you. First of all, thank you for both of you for your very kind and warm welcome. It's a treat for me to be with both of you.
Thank you.
I think unpleasant feelings are liberating.
Tell us more about that, Joan. Many people would have a hard time taking that in at the first time they hear that.
Yeah, no. And let me walk it backwards because it actually starts with me being a shy, sensitive child.
Yeah.
And I was the word wallflower would fit for me, but I wasn't, and I'm right next to a wall right here, but I wasn't just a wallflower. I was Velcroed to that wall. So that's how shy I was. And so I'd look over at my peers and I felt different. I started school at a young age, the whole thing. And I'd look over my peers and it was like, I don't feel like I fit in. I don't have what they have. It's like, how do I belong and how do I develop confidence? Because I realized I couldn't just go walk up next to them, sit and be right up next to them and say, well, can I get what you have? Right? Is it right? So I couldn't do that. And so the first question really that I kind of wrestled with is from a childhood on was, how does one develop confidence? Because I surely did not have that. And then when I got into my professional life as a psychologist, a second question emerged for me. And that next question was, what made it so difficult for the people I was working with to deal with unpleasant feelings? So what's so interesting to me and why I said liberating is because what I began to understand as the years went by is that the answer to the second question, about unpleasant feelings actually answers the first question about confidence. So the truth is, the foundation of having confidence and resilience and living authentically in the world is to be able to experience and express unpleasant feelings. And so that's why I think it's so liberating, because it's the foundational piece to it. It's not the only thing, but it's the foundation to it.
Yeah, I think that is so spot on, Joan. Yeah. Like a mind bomb. It's so true, though. It is so true. And, you know, what's so interesting, you know, kids are learning how to feel their emotions, and some adults are still learning. And, right?
All of us. Yeah.
I know. And, you know, I do a lot of family intake still. And so I listen for emotional language. Like, I listen who's using it, and, you know, because it's so helpful to be able to understand you have this emotion, this is what it is, because without identifying it, kids can gravitate and get stuck towards one, anger, you know, worry, whatever it is. So, you know, as kids are moving through these, you know, what is your advice for parents about, you know, helping them grow? What happens when they get stuck a little bit, which can happen, a little stuck and a big stuck, two different things. You know, I'd love to talk a little bit about that, because I think that can be so useful for parents who feel I'm all about empowering parents, and parents are often made to feel shamed and ill-equipped. And it's just about learning first and trying to apply. And if you can't do it, then you get some help, right? And it can be so magical for children, it really can.
Right. So there's so many kind of thoughts flooding in. So the first thing is to have I would love it if parents had access to their own pain from their own childhood. Not that they feel it and get flooded by it, but only that they are able to remember what that pain felt like, so that they have access to the pain. But again, it's not flooding their life in the present moment. And why do I want that? Because if they have access to that pain, it's going to help them be a more empathic parent to the child, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing has to do with a parent's ability to regulate his or her own reactions. So that what I like to say, and you know, I teach graduate students how to do therapy. And what I say to them is that you can only take a client you're working with so far, as you can go. So you are the measure of the emotional range of what's happening in that room, right? So I would say the same thing about parents, that a parent needs to understand that how they're showing up with their children, the children will grow or can grow, for good or bad, to the emotional range of whatever they're seeing in the household. So if a parent is withdrawn and shuts down when there's conflict, or gets and goes to one end of the shutdown spectrum, then a child can learn it's okay to withdraw and shut down and not engage. Or the other side, a parent that is explosive or gets rageful, then the child goes, oh, okay, that's a way to solve problems. I can do that too. So the child will develop to that kind of an emotional range, or can. They don't necessarily have to choose to, but they've seen it. So that emotional range is now available to them. So what do I want then? I obviously, the best circumstances is to have a parent, or both parents, or whoever the caregivers are that are in the home, be able to have an emotional range that is well regulated and not to either extreme, or rarely to either extreme. And what they're able to do is to be in a range that captures both pleasant and unpleasant feelings, but not to the extreme of the shutdown or the rage. Right?
And you know, there's so many things that you're saying that I love, because you're saying you can have emotions. We're not, you know, and
absolutely.
Just get rid of the extremes. And the other thing that, you know, a lot of parents feel like they feel trapped because their own parents taught them these ways, and they may not recognize that until they see those same kind of patterns happening in their own kids. And as much as, us poor mothers and dads, we get blamed for a lot, but we really are our teachers. We're the teachers of our children, and it's emotional too. We overemphasize some of these other things like sports and academics. And in this time of quarantine, we're starting to understand that some kids really struggle with a regulation of their behaviors, their social functioning, their emotions. But parents can do this stuff for themselves, and there's such a great benefit, right? Those bonus benefits that go all around. And so, the next part of that is to recognize and help kids, right? But get into a less extreme. Well, where do they start?
Right. Well, okay. So a couple different, but let me take one step. Yeah, no, it's great. Great question. Let me one step further with this, because that was the kind of the third thing I wanted to go for. And that is one of the most important things that parents can teach children. And I know you know the term, and you both know the term, is the whole notion of frustration tolerance. So that if and that we that's what we kind of started with, this notion of blessing the skin knee, is that it's helping a child be able to negotiate, handle, experience, and express feelings about things that do not turn out well or the way they wanted in life, right? So they get sad about it. They got sad because they didn't get picked for a team. They got embarrassed because the recital didn't go as well as they wanted. They were angry because they missed the catch on the touchdown, the winning touchdown. They on the balance beam, they slipped and fell, right? And then they were bounced off the competition. So the most important thing that an adult can do, or the caregiver or parent can do, is to help a child experience and move through the unpleasant feelings that are associated with things not working out the way they want or they feel like they need. And when they've got that ability, which we in psychology call frustration tolerance, and they can handle those disappointments, or in quotes, failures in life, then now that's why I'm saying it's liberating. Now they can go pursue whatever they want and know that they can handle the emotional outcome if it doesn't turn out well.
This is so important, Dr. Joan. Can you talk about how parents can best help their children do that? And I think there are so many things that get wrapped up in this, that it's not always easy to handle your own frustration or disappointment as a parent. It's not always easy to handle the fullness of feeling or the ups and downs of feeling that children have. So what is the best way for a parent to be able to walk their children through expressing and handling these moments of frustration or failure or disappointment? I think that this is a really, really important skill to be able to practice. So I'd love to hear an example of how to walk through it.
Thank you. You referenced the book earlier. So in the book, I talk about what I call a formula for being able to do that. And so the formula is 1 choice, 8 feelings, 90 seconds. So what's the 1 choice? The 1 choice is I'm going to be as aware of and in touch with as much of my moment-to-moment experience as possible. So first I want the parent to do that. And then ultimately the goal is to have the parent teach the child to do that. That we want to stay aware of those feelings because they actually help guide and protect us. And the unpleasant feelings exist for protective purposes in our life. That's why they're there, right? So they're not bad and they're not negative. They're just unpleasant or uncomfortable. And so the first thing is be aware and not avoid. So don't go drinking, don't, zone out on TV or screens or video games, or there's so many ways we can distract. So both for parents and for kids. So I don't know that I need to enumerate those, but that's, so awareness, not avoidance. Second thing are the 8 feelings. So 1 choice, awareness, 8 feelings. I talk about sadness, shame, helplessness, anger, the experience of vulnerability, embarrassment, disappointment, and frustration.
Mm-hmm.
And the first question I'll usually get is, okay, why those 8?
Mm-hmm.
And it's those 8 because they're the most common everyday spontaneous reactions to things not turning out the way we want.
That's right.
So it's the everydayness of these feelings,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I just like I might stub my toe, I might have a feeling like this that comes up during the day or during the week, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's the everyday quality of it. And then the 90 seconds piece is that the idea here is that when, and again, I was trying to answer the question, what makes it so difficult for unpleasant feelings for people to experience those? So the answer really lies in the 90 seconds idea. And the 90 seconds idea is that when a feeling gets triggered, there's this rush of biochemicals into our bloodstream that activate bodily sensations, and those same biochemicals flush out of the bloodstream in roughly 90 seconds. But here's the key. And the key is that the way we come to know what we feel emotionally
Mm-hmm.
is through bodily sensation.
That's
So,
right.
so think heat up into the neck and into the face for embarrassment, right? Or think maybe a downward sensation for sadness in the chest.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we know what we're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So that the key then to handle unpleasant feelings is to do what I call ride short-lived bodily sensation waves.
Mm-hmm.
And that what I became aware of is that what people wanted to avoid was the bodily sensation that helped them know what they were feeling. It's not that they didn't want to feel the whole range of what they felt. In fact, I think people do. We want to feel, because when we feel that whole range, we feel alive. That's vitality.
Yes, it is. Amen.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, for sure.
That's part of our charisma.
Yes.
Is that why are we attracted to people? Because they can express that emotionality. That's aliveness and charisma. So I want people to have that whole range.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not in the extremes, but the whole range, and that what it comes down to is understanding that what the key is to ride short-lived bodily sensation waves in order to do that.
I love this. There's so much richness here, Dr. Joan. One of the things that comes up for me as I'm listening is two things. How do you experience the fullness of human emotion?
Yes.
Without entering the extremes? And maybe it's because you allow yourself to experience the fullness that you don't go to extremes.
That's part of it.
And I want you to speak to both of these things. The other thing is that we're so over medicated in Western society today, especially in the United States where all of us live, the 3 of us live. And one of the issues is that we are restricting the range of human experience when we are medicating, because yes, there's clinical depression, but sadness is a normal human emotion. Yes, there are clinical levels of anxiety, but fearfulness and worry are part of the normal human experience. And so I would love to hear you speak to both of them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I wanted to make sure the thing you want your child to do then is to also ride those same waves. You want to teach them it's a wave. Just ride the wave. Take a deep breath. So take a deep breath, pause, ride the wave, and then see if you can identify what the reaction is linked to. So
Joan, I love to teach children, if somebody's feeling frustrated or whatnot, I actually like them to connect to the body and say,
yes.
Where are you feeling it? And so that it doesn't become something they hate. And it's like, okay. And then I'm sure, I know you're going to talk about this. And then usually I ask them, what are things that help you in this moment, right? So you feel it, you experience it, you label it, you understand it, and then you try to move forward. Because getting stuck isn't good either. But sometimes we have extended periods of grief or embarrassment or whatnot temporarily, and that's okay. But it's so important to pay attention to those body movements. I love, sensations. And that's where people with trauma, right? What do? They want to avoid every component of that body sensation, and they want to get out of their body. And that's where we think of trauma, for parents that are listening. We think of trauma as these massive things, but many little things can be traumatic. A kid teasing you, a terrible embarrassment or an injury, or, certain things can really get stuck. And kids understanding the range of emotions and that they are useful and can get through them is such an empowering thing for a parent and a child. So I'm grateful that you're bringing that up.
Right. So, and Cleopatra, I'm going to come back to your question in a moment, if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind at all. We're so excited about what you're teaching us and talking about. We have a million questions.
Right. So I want to make sure that your question doesn't get lost. So I'm mindful of that. So coming back to the Roseann for a second on what you were just talking about, that yes. So what I would have both a parent do and then a parent teach a child to do is first to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
You want to take deep, slow breaths, and you want to breathe into the experience itself so you don't shut it down. And us human beings are very sneaky about shutting that stuff down. Mm-hmm. So not only do we have the big ways to avoid, we can be sneaky by swallowing and shutting something down. We can be sneaky by holding our breath and shutting down the experience. And we can be sneaky by tightening our muscles and shutting it down. So I don't want any of those three subtle things to happen. I want someone to breathe into it, breathe slowly, so you can let the wave kind of move through you. Mm-hmm. And then once you're kind of breathing and settled into it, then go, all right, where am I feeling that? So that you start to notice where in your body certain feelings seem to reside, so you're better at identifying them. Then what I want you to do is to see if you can identify what it's linked to, what seemed to trigger this. And then, again, you can do some of what you were suggesting, Roseann, or you can also, if someone's older, they can go, is there any pattern to this? Mm-hmm. Right? Do I keep on reacting to the same doggone thing over and over? And then the next thing is, what can I learn from it, right? And so there's other questions one can ask as well. But then you start to gain insights, and maybe you learn that, oh, wait a minute, I need to make a decision to handle such and such differently, or I need to express this. I can't just sit on it. I need to express it, or maybe there's an action I need to take. So that there's at least three major things that can come out of your awareness and the insights you gather from actually kind of moving your way through the feeling. So
such useful information for parents to, not only understand, but take action on and support their kids. Because, I know you're really aware and do a lot of work with mindset as well, Joan. But, now they're trying to dive into what are the best characteristics of managers and super successful people. And it all boils down to frustration tolerance, your emotional, your emotions and how you regulate your emotions. These are the most successful people. So it's pretty unbelievable, but it's not for us as health providers. But so thank you for breaking it down, because it's always good to know where to start. And these are little things that can have big waves.
Right. And the other thing that a parent can do, in addition to teaching them how to stay present to the feeling, is that they actually get children to narrate. Mm-hmm. So when a child is upset, you want to pay attention to it. You want to help give the child a feeling word for it. So if they keep on, pounding their fists or stomping their feet, then start to put language to that. Is the person angry? Is the child angry or disappointed or frustrated? Or start to give them language so that they develop an emotional language for it, as opposed to going through the actions. Now they can actually use the word. The other thing that when they go through an experience, so let's say they were embarrassed about slipping off the balance beam, right? that they tell it, they express it. They don't just withdraw and then walk away and crawl into the bed and get under the covers and that's it. No, you go and you talk to the child and go, you know what, that was really hard, but you made an effort, and part of the challenge here is that sometimes stuff doesn't work out. Talk to me about what you're going through. So what the parent can do is to help the child narrate the life experience. And when then they're giving expression to it. So that's a healthier response.
And that narration, if they can't do it for themselves, Joan, they then begin to connect. Oh, my body felt like this
right
when I was frustrated or
yes.
embarrassed
yes.
or whatever. And that's I always think of parenting as teaching. That's it. It's not punishment. And these are all little moments.
Right.
That all add up. And it's so important. I think the emotional language piece is one of the most undervalued concepts and tools that parents, they just don't know it. We're not giving them that message. It's really a definer in life. You need stress tolerance, and it starts with that early management. You're never too old, Joan. You can learn this at 57.
Yeah.
I always talk about kids that when I get asked who I work with, I always say my answer is kids over 20.
That's awesome. I love it.
You work with kids under 20. I tend to work with kids over 20. So anyway, but Cleopatra, I want to come back to your questions in terms of, you talked about the extreme. If you'll come back, I don't know if you recall your question exactly.
I absolutely remember the question, which is, how do you experience the fullness of your emotion without experiencing the extremes? And one of the reasons I asked this question is because it's not only for us, but for what we are handing down to our children, because we can teach them all day long, but the most important way we teach them is through our own reactions and our own behavior and what we model for them. And so that's why I'm asking this question.
No, it's great. And it's a great question. So to your initial point, when we shut down and we don't express, so we're not very good about using our language, or we get too embarrassed about saying the things, or we don't understand, we don't like to feel vulnerable and say the words. And we just shut down, and we shut down, and we never ask for help. Then what ends up happening is that when you finally have a reaction to something, and it could be something small that then becomes the flashpoint, and now I'm in this big fire hydrant explosion. And I'm in this big fire hydrant explosion because all that pressure built up, and I wasn't expressing along the way. So one of the key things that someone can do to prevent that is to, again, if they have to learn how to be in the experience of it first, then the next step is the expression of it. That our health and well-being comes from both of those, not just one of those. So that, and when I'm busy expressing, then what I'm going through on a more frequent basis, now it's like a water faucet pressure. Where I can kind of control the flow. It doesn't get to the extreme, right? So one of the most important pieces of making it so it doesn't get to the extreme is for one to learn how to express one's experience or one's feelings. Thoughts, actually what I would say is learn how to express one's thoughts, feelings, and needs.
I love that. That's so important. Thank you, Dr. Joan.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
And what would you say to people about the social norm that we now face of over medicating so that we're not experiencing the full range of emotions, and that we're now doing this to children too? And I think part of why we do this is because the stakes feel really high. The requirement for our level of functioning as adults and children in society today are so high. We have to be on all the time. There's always a camera following us. There's always a highlight reel. there. And I think the standards get higher and higher. It's harder to get into preschool. It's harder to get into college. And there's no space for having a rough patch. And I think that that's why people are so quick to accept a prescription for themselves and for their children. And so I want to know, when you say that negative feeling, or this, quote unquote negative feelings, uncomfortable feelings, because even those uncomfortable feelings are not negative because they provide us with valuable information, critical information. What would you say about these uncomfortable feelings being liberating for us, even when the stakes feel high, and it would be easier to turn to a medication to get rid of them?
Right. Which was the second part to your question. So yeah, thank you for bringing that back.
Absolutely.
So I actually have a pretty strong view about this.
Let's hear it.
Okay. Going out on a limb here.
And we want it. Let's go. We'll go with you.
All right, good. So it actually is tied to both depression and to anxiety, because I think very differently about both of those experiences. I talk about something in the book, and actually it's more briefly mentioned than actually discussed. I call something soulful depression. And I actually happen to think that probably the greatest majority, I have no way to prove this, but probably the greatest majority of people who say that they're depressed and then get put on meds are actually not depressed from the true clinical sense of the word, but instead are what I call soulfully depressed. It's soulful depression, meaning, so what does that mean? It means that they've spent a long time cutting off, distracting from those same doggone 8 unpleasant feelings that result over time, in a long period of time, I might add, into experiences of what people would describe as feeling depressed, empty, numb, disconnected, and what it is really is soulful depression.
I mean, I couldn't agree more with that, Joan. And what I think that nexus for people, what I see particularly, I mean, I work with all ages, but even for kids, is that they have these feelings that make them uncomfortable. Then that turns into anxiety. They get a worry pattern. Then they get depressed. And it's just both depression and anxiety for me, for a lot of people. And I say to you, I have no evidence for this, but I actually have a lot of brain mass, so I do have some evidence. But is that they just need to disconnect from the uncomfortableness. I mean, I say that all the time, and it is very, very true. And I love Cleopatra's notion. And, I always say we live busy lives, but really there's even another level of that there's no space in our busy life for that.
There's not. There's not. I think everybody's feeling like the stakes are so high, even from the moment our children emerge from the womb. I mean, even before, in the trimester, etc. I think that we're in this moment of quarantine where we're all home much more than we're used to being home. Our schedules are less hectic than they're used to being, and a lot of people are reflecting on, wow, we run around like crazy most of the time, and there's not a lot of space for feeling and just being human. And a lot of people are finding themselves deeply uncomfortable with being with themselves and their partners and their children and all of the humanness of that being. And it's really interesting to watch, but most of the time it doesn't feel like there's the space for that. And you talk about how this all started from the place of being an incredibly shy child, being the wallflower, being Velcroed to the wall, which I thought was really cute, even though I know it doesn't feel cute in the moment and at all.
Yes.
And
we just appreciated the visual.
Absolutely, 100%. And also, what's amazing for all of our mamas watching is that Dr. Joan is such a beacon. She's everywhere speaking, sharing her wisdom. She's the person, so many of us, we're in this amazing community of doctors and healthcare providers, and we're all turning to her all the time for advice and information. And it's so hard to imagine that she was this incredibly shy child who couldn't speak up. But you talk about how this path that you've been on in your life and in your professional world started from that experience. And what's interesting is that we were all born in a time when we can remember life without social media.
Right.
And social media introduces a whole new layer of complication because social media is the reality of our life today. It is the reality of life for young people, for children from a very young age, even when we try really hard to prevent that and protect them from that. And it is a highlight. Social media is essentially a highlight reel of people's lives. And so the discomfort with uncomfortable emotions, I feel like, is greater than ever, because the unspoken message is that if you're experiencing uncomfortable emotions, your life is not measuring up to what everybody else is experiencing. And what we fail to remember is that we're not seeing all of those moments that everybody else is experiencing, only our own.
Right.
So what advice do you have for mamas who are raising children in this time when there's even more stigma associated with not just mental health challenges, but the full range of human emotion when it includes uncomfortable emotion?
Yeah, no, well, that actually takes me back to the second part of your question, because you also, both you and Roseann, have referenced anxiety. And so I want to build on that, and because I think it partly answer this next question that you've just also asked, and I want to make sure that we spend time talking a little bit about creating that space.
Let's do it.
Or for meditation or ritual or something like that.
Yes.
But before I get there, here, let me talk about anxiety, because the anxiety piece feeds right into the very thing you're talking about. And again, I think I have different thoughts about stuff. And one of my different thoughts is centered around this idea of anxiety, right? So in the same way that we're medicating depression, we're medicating anxiety. But my more global view of what anxiety is that it's actually a distraction from unpleasant feelings. The same 8 unpleasant feelings. So it just acts as an umbrella over the 8 unpleasant feelings. And the first one that I would say for people to check themselves on, so when they use the word anxiety, I would say, stop using the word anxiety. It's overused and misused. Instead, check yourself and see if you're experiencing one or more of the 8 unpleasant feelings I talk about. Now, the first one to check is vulnerability. So what's vulnerability? Sense I could get hurt, right? So, okay, I'm going to go out and be on that balance beam. I'm going to be the kid running down to try to catch the touchdown. I'm going to try to get on the team. I'm going to, whatever it is, then one is being vulnerable. They're putting themselves in a situation where they could get hurt, i.e., what do I mean by that? They might experience one or more of the other 7 feelings. So that vulnerability is the first one to check. But lots of times people will say they're anxious, so maybe it's not vulnerability. People will say they're anxious, but the reason they're anxious is because they're not expressing, they're not allowing themselves to feel nor express the real feelings that are going on. So let's say, I had a conversation with a client this morning, and she was telling me how she gets really angry with her mom about when the mother does not fold her laundry properly and it's wrinkled, and she gets really angry with her mom when she overwatered a plant that the individual had already watered. She's really upset about it, right? Okay, fine. The feelings are legit, but they didn't get expressed. So now she's anxious.
Right.
That energy's got to go someplace. So it turns into anxiety. So another way that I look at anxiety, Cleopatra, is to think of it as not just this umbrella over the 8 unpleasant feelings, but it's when you're neither experiencing nor expressing particularly an unpleasant feeling. It could be a positive one too. It could be me looking at you and saying, hey, I love you. I want to spend more time with you. But more often than not, it's with the unpleasant ones. Sometimes it's with the pleasant, but mostly unpleasant. So then how does this fit? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, it's so interesting because it matches up so closely with what Dr. Roseann was saying, which is that she's observed that people will have these uncomfortable feelings and the bodily sensations that you talk about that accompany them.
Right.
And then they're afraid of having them and they get into worry, and that's when they start experiencing anxiety. So you're both describing in different ways the same sort of cycle. And I think that that's really interesting because I see people as a professor, I see young people with debilitating anxiety constantly. As someone who specializes in fertility and is helping people overcome fertility challenges, they often come with a history of depression and anxiety. And I see how debilitating the anxiety can be. But what's so interesting is that we are, from what both of you are saying, we're so clearly over focusing on the anxiety and not getting to the heart of the matter, which is what's happening underneath that's creating this feedback loop.
Exactly, 100% accurate. And one of the questions that I will ask the first time I work with somebody, Cleopatra, I ask two questions. How well do you experience your unpleasant feelings? And how well do you express your unpleasant feelings? Because that's going to give me an immediate gauge on where I need to work.
I'm going to write those down.
An immediate gauge based on where I need to take somebody in terms of whatever problem they're kind of coming in with. So those are two standard questions in my intake, if you will.
I love it.
So then how does that link up with the social media piece? The social media piece is, and the worry or the fretting about that is, one, when you get into comparison, you now checked out of your own experience.
Yes, it's so true, Dr. Joan.
Right. So I think the only thing I think comparison is good for is for aspirational purposes.
Love it.
Right. I want to be like the female star of the soccer team. Right. I think I can do that. Okay, now it's aspirational. Now I'm going to compare because I have an aspiration to go for. Or people would talk about, Michael Jordan or, the one.
Oprah's that for me. That this woman could do this and I can do it too. But not, oh my gosh, I haven't done what she's done yet. Right? I think that's so powerful.
Right. So that's the only thing comparison is good for. It's for aspirational.
So good.
So then if I'm caught in the comparison when I'm looking at social media, then what I'm doing is I'm disowning my own power. I'm dismissing my own thoughts, feelings, and needs. And I'm distracting from my own experience of vulnerability.
So good. I'm writing this down because I want to go back and share it with my conceiving mamas who are primestering with us right now, because they always talk about how difficult it is to be on social media and to see new pregnancy announcements and new baby announcements. And I'm trying to process how to make this usable for them.
Right. So
in
here's
their experience.
Right. So here's how it would be usable. One, it's if they're looking at it and comparing. Now that's the distraction or disowning of their own experience. Right. So and what's their own experience? Sadness. I'm not there yet.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So then what they're doing is they're using the focus on that to actually distract from the truth of where they are. And the truth of where they are is that they might be sad, angry, disappointed, feeling helpless, feeling frustrated. And same 8 feelings. Feeling embarrassed that they don't have a child yet. And so the thing is, it's like, no, let's just look at it. that's not what, but when the moment you start to compare, now you're distracting from your own experience.
Okay. And then dismissing their own thoughts, feelings, and needs
as a result of that. Yeah.
I mean, that's really powerful because people, it is so easy to get in comparison mode, as you said. And then, you know, you dismiss your own power if you're caught in that negative looping, you know, really very much so. And how easy is that to have today? As you said, Cleopatra, a mom, you know, sees somebody having baby after baby and she wants that for herself. I mean, that is sadness. And
that is hard.
You know, but
so
you can't live there. You have to experience it and then not be stuck. That's, I think, I see, you know, as we kind of, you know, in the beginning, we talked about kids getting stuck in certain feelings and how to help them process it is to actually acknowledge it, how it feels, put words to it. So critical, so important. And I think as Cleopatra and you both said, this fast-moving society, we really are moving away from that when we should instead really be reinforcing it more because there's so many opportunities to disconnect.
So true. Well, Dr. Joan, pardon me, Dr. Rowe, were you finished with your statement?
Oh, yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure because I know we're getting close to wrapping up, but as you were saying that, it reminded me that Dr. Joan said, let's make sure we talk about how to create that space. So can we get that piece of wisdom from you, Dr. Joan, before we wrap up for today?
My thing is that I think of it from the standpoint of a parent creating a ritual for a child. And when a child is very young, right, so that they're in infancy or they're in early toddlerhood, they're going to take a nap at a certain time, right?
Yes.
Or there are certain things that you have set up in the ideal. You have it set up in kind of a little bit more of a scheduled opportunity. No matter what it is, bath time is this time. Feeding is this time. Whatever it might be. That a parent think about creating a ritual with and for a child to build in those timeouts. That it's like, you know what? This is pause time. You're not doing homework now. You're not watching TV now. You're not, you and I might spend that time together. And so it could be an opportunity to create, and it could be, let's do it what most people talk about in terms of meditation, a 20-minute meditation. So all it needs to be is at least a minimum of a 20-minute period each day. Or most days.
It's so important, Joan, because it's the ritual, right?
Yes.
And we want to think it's like, yeah, you do it for an hour and it works, but it doesn't work like that. And it's good for you and it's good for them. And it's a wonderful way to connect and preserve communication and calm the nervous system all at the same time.
Right.
Absolutely.
Exactly. So I would say if a parent can help a child, and it might work for the parent too, of course.
Yes.
The child over 20 as well as the child.
That's right.
The idea here then is that you build in a 20-minute period on more days than not throughout the week, where the child, that's just reflect time. It's just being in a space where they can take account of what the day turned out like, what the week turned out to be, but they stay present to what they think, what they feel, and what they need. And that can be done alone, I would say some of those times should be better for them to do it alone. And some of those periods spent with a caregiver, a parent. And so that as Roseann was just talking about, it becomes kind of a co-regulation time and a bonding time. And there is absolutely nothing. There's not even reading of books that's occurring. It could be a hug fest, right? And that's all it is. It's a 20-minute hug fest.
I love it.
And or the child is simply resting. You're both laying down, and the child has their ear on your heart, right? And that's all they're doing, is they're just being next to you, and it's quiet, and there's not even conversation. It's what a friend of mine calls silent communion.
Yeah, I love that. It's beautiful.
So I want to be clear that I think it's really important to build in, and I would call it a ritual of at least that 20-minute kind of space.
I love that so much.
I love even just having a hug fest, you know. I mean,
Me too.
calling it that and creating that space. We kind of do, we don't call it a hug fest, but I'm going to call it that. But we do that every night in my house. With my youngest does it, because the 15-year-old's not going to want to do it. But we do PEMF, and I have it set up on a bed. And we get in there, and we often just hug, and sometimes we tell jokes. And we just
I love it, Dr. Ro.
And so if we don't do PMF, then we have our own disco ball and we disco dance. So we do something like that. It's just fun and sweet, and it's just lovely. And what a great way to end your night.
Yep.
So good. I love, for both of you, for all of you.
For everybody.
Yeah, totally. Dr. Joan, this has been so amazing. We absolutely want you to come back. I know our mamas are loving this and want more of Dr. Joan. Dr. Joan, where can they, in addition to getting your awesome book, 90 Seconds to a Life You Love, How to Master Your Difficult Feelings to Cultivate Lasting Confidence, Resilience, and Authenticity, so good. Where else can they connect with you? Can they learn more from you?
If they go to drjoanrosenberg.com, has a number of different resources there. If people want to stay really close in touch with me, they can get on my mailing list, and there's a number of free downloads that they can get. Actually, my Ease Your Anxiety book right now is a PDF. I'm offering it as a PDF download for free.
Awesome.
And we'll have all the links in the show notes too for people.
Perfect. So. Exactly. We'll spell out Dr. Joan Rosenberg's name for you mamas so that you can go there and get the anxiety download, not to have anxiety, but to work through the anxiety.
Ease your anxiety.
Exactly. Exactly.
So that's an anxiety, Cleopatra.
That's the absolute easiest, and then there's a contact sheet there, so if people want to reach out to me directly, then email, etc.
Well, thank you for your wisdom and sharing your insight. And I think when kids struggle with emotions and regulation, people don't know where to go, and you gave people some really actionable things. And it's the ritual, it's the daily practice of these things that really create lasting change.
Right.
Absolutely.
And the truth is, as you well know, both of you know, that communication is both the experience of being able to regulate your feelings and the being able to communicate your feelings are both skills to develop.
Yes.
So it's not
100%.
None of us is at a loss. It just takes practice, like everything else. But you can learn it, and then you can be really effective at doing it. So.
I think that was such an important note. Thank you for making that note as we're finishing up here, that even if you haven't thought of yourself as good at this in the past, this is a muscle that you can build and begin to model more masterfully for your children over time. So Dr. Joan, thank you so much. It has been a gift and an honor and pleasure to have you here with us and our mamas. And I love you both so much. So grateful to call you my sisters, Dr. Roseann and Dr. Joan. Thank you, mamas, for being here with us today for this episode.